It's been rumored for quite a while, but now it actually officially happened. You have J.K. Dobbins going to the IR. We have actually some other interesting injury news that we got to dive through real quick. But anyway, let's go through. Sam Laporta is also on the IR. So I have nuked Sam Laporta in our rest of season ranks. I mean, I think if you don't have a dedicated IR slot, you can very easily just cut Laporta because at the very minimum, he's out 4 weeks. That's going to be weeks 11, 12, 13, 14. So the very best, he's back for the fantasy football playoffs, which we don't even know if that will be the case. So like I moved him below somebody like Theo Johnson in my rest of season ranks. J.K. Dobbins going to the IR as well. I mean, I moved Dobbins below guys like Blake Corum. Very easily, this could end up to J.K. Dobbins not playing again at any point this year. But again, maybe there's an outside chance he's back by the fantasy. But J.K. Dobbins is done. Like I said, I moved him behind the handcuff running backs. And with this as well, we did dramatically move up R.J. Harvey. We had previously had R.J. Harvey as a low-end RB2 in our rest of season ranks at RB23. And since then, we went ahead and we moved R.J. Harvey up to being a mid-running back 2 around RB18. Let's see if we have any other updates. Not really today. It's mainly just Dobbins going to the IR as well as Laporta going to the IR. So again, if you are in a spot in which you had either player and you were relying on them, you probably need to go through and hit the waiver wire. But let's move this over. Let's answer some questions. Let's look at some teams. Again, want to thank everybody for hanging out with us. And I will show y'all just really quick what the projections would be for somebody like RJ Harvey this week specifically. Obviously, this week for Harvey, it's going to be a tough matchup going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. But if you are looking at the current projections, RJ Harvey is still somebody that you probably want to go ahead and put into your lineup this week. Like going over to Underdog Fantasy, RJ Harvey currently against the Kansas City Chiefs is higher lower 73.5 total yards and is higher lower 11.15 fantasy points. For reference, Jahmyr Gibbs is higher lower 13.85 fantasy points, right? Which I know a lot of people would be interested in that Gibbs higher. But if y'all wanted to take advantage of those projections, if you ever wanted to go and check those out on Underdog Fantasy, the link's always in the description. It's always in the comment section. It's always in the live chat. If you use code FLOCK when you sign up to Underdog Fantasy, you'll get $100 added to your account after you play your first 5. And on top of that, you'll get a gimme pick. It'll be something like CeeDee Lamb, higher, lower, half a total yard. And on top of that, you'll actually get free questions for these live streams. And I'm live streaming every single day until Christmas answering your questions. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this. This is going to be from Panthers. It says, looking where I should best upgrade my team. I have 5 good running backs, so really trying to use that to upgrade my QBs. What teams would you target to look to do that? So first thing I want to reference is there is a team in your league that is absolutely loaded. This team here has Brock Bowers at tight end, Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Running back, they have CMC and Javonte, and wide receiver, they have Puka, JSN, as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Somehow, this team's sitting with a 4-6 record, which is beyond me. So maybe you don't even have to go up against that team in the playoffs. Now, we are currently at 5-5. We are 5th in this league in points scored. So far this season, we've been dead in the middle of the road. Going ahead and looking at what we have from a roster perspective, we are sitting with 3 quarterbacks on this team. Now, it does look like the majority of people in your league are rostering 3 quarterbacks. Going to the waiver wire, the only notable names are like Bryce Young and Cam Ward. So it makes me think that maybe this is a super flex league. And obviously, if this is a super flex league, I would just go ahead and leave it as is. But if it's a 1 quarterback format and you have Dak Prescott and CJ Stroud, then honestly, I don't think you need to Roster Michael Penix. I don't necessarily know what Michael Penix would accomplish on this team for you. So if this was a one quarterback format, I would go ahead. I would cut Michael Penix, and instead I would pick up somebody like Jordan Mason. I think if you're looking at Mason, if you were to get an injury to Aaron Jones, all of a sudden, I don't know, you could see Jordan Mason getting a massive spike up in value. Going over to the running backs, you're currently sitting with the elite RB1 with Josh Jacobs. We have another very strong running back one with Dowdle. Chase Brown's our running back 3, which is incredible. We have Tyrone Tracy, RB4, Alvin Kamara, RB5. Now, to just be honest with you, if you were to go through and if you were to try to sell somebody like Tyrone Tracy, sell somebody like Alvin Kamara, nobody's going to be interested, right? You may say like, oh, I have 5 decent running backs. Let me go through and let me sell Alvin Kamara and one of the quarterbacks to go and get a QB upgrade. It's just simply not happening. Nobody's ever going to get here excited to trade for Kamara. Now, what you could look at is you could say like, oh, Tyrone Tracy is my RB4. I would be okay with him being my RB3. Oh, Alvin Kamara as my running back 5. I would be okay with him being my running back 4. So if you wanted to look at throwing Chase Brown and Dak Prescott in a deal together, where obviously Chase Brown is steaming up. Chase Brown's looked incredible. But if you wanted to offer them in a 2-for-1 deal, possibly to get yourself to one of the true elite level quarterbacks, get yourself to somebody like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, I think you can look at making one of those moves. Okay. And then at wide receiver, we have London, Pickens, Olave, and then a bunch of crap. So realistically, I would say that when we're looking at guys like Jaden Higgins and Michael Wilson, they're never hitting your starting lineup. Like Michael Wilson right now with no Marvin Harrison this week, are you even starting him? No, you're starting London, Pickens, Olave, Jacobs, Dowdle, and Chase Brown. So like the week that you have no Marvin Harrison, you're still not starting Michael Wilson. So why would we bother rostering him? Because we're definitely not starting him next week when Michael Wilson has Marv back into his offense. So I would cut Michael Wilson. I would pick up DJ Moore. I would probably cut Jaden Higgins now as well that you have Nico Collins back in. Like nothing about this Jaden Higgins profile interests me that much. So I'd probably cut Jaden Higgins, pick up Chimere DK. Going over to tight end, we have Kittle and Juwan Johnson. We can start Kittle every single week. You just need that 1 week fill-in with Juwan during the Kittle bye. So I'm in 100% agreement with you. What you want to do is you want to leverage some of the expendable running back depth that we have and see if you can get yourself to a true elite level QB. Now, by all means, you can start it off by trying to sell Alvin Kamara, by trying to sell Tyrone Tracy. The expectations I would just have is nobody's going to buy these players. So I would say what you realistically need to do is probably be willing to include Chase Brown in one of those deals if it's going to get you a true top 3 quarterback. And then be okay with Tracy moving to be your RB3 and Kamara moving to be your RB4. And then again, I would cut Michael Penix, assuming that this is a 1 quarterback format. I would pick up Jordan Mason. I would cut Jaden Higgins and Michael Wilson to pick up DJ Moore and Chimere DK. Or if you were looking at another running back, you could go Isaiah Pacheco. You could go buy Shell Tootin. But I really appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help you out in some way with this, my friend. Okay. Now, let's move this over to our next question. It's going to be from Dan Arkeed. Says, need to trade for a quarterback. Got offer for Burrow, Dart, or Williams for Henderson in the big Q or something like that. Not interested at all. It's Henderson in the big Q here pretty easily. Okay. Trade deadline this week, or do you think Henderson will have a great second half of the season and stick to streaming quarterback points? So here's my general read always when we're looking at the quarterbacks. If you can trade for one of the elite quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, you should do it. But if you're instead going down to like the Jackson Dart range, instead of sending somebody exciting like Trevion Henderson for a player like Jackson Dart, I think you'd be much better off opting to go ahead and just stream quarterback points. Going over to the waiver wire, like quarterback streamer that you could look at this week would be JJ McCarthy in a really good matchup. Not telling you that that's the number one option that you have. I just think that in general, you're probably in a spot in which at least I would say, like, Dart's not worth us sending one of those top end running backs for. But we have plenty of depth across the positions, right? We have the number one team in this league in terms of value with the league analyzer. We're only 6-4, but we've scored the most points in this league. Looking at the deals that we've been making, we have been going through and selling the packages to get improvements inside the starting lineup, which in general I like because you have so much depth on this team as is. So running back, you have CMC, Henderson, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne. So you have 4 startable running backs. Going over to receiver, you have Rice, Rome, Devonta Smith, Brian Thomas. So you have 4 startable wide receivers. And then even Juwan Jennings, it can be playable in a desperate situation. And then you have the elite tight end option with Trey McBride. So if we were to look at this, I am in 100% agreement that if you get the opportunity to go ahead and send one of the running backs and get yourself a true elite level quarterback, I would love to do so. But again, I would say in general, we're not looking at the Dart, Caleb Williams, Joe Burrow range. I would try to sell like Derrick Henry and get back in return Jalen Hurts. Get back in return Mahomes. Get back in return Allen, Lamar. Whether you're sending Henry, Trevion Henderson, Travis Etienne, frankly, it doesn't matter, any of those players. Now, we can go through and look at the teams that have the most value at quarterback. Look, this team is Mahomes and May. Like, realistically, there's a shot that they would send you Drake May for Travis Etienne. They don't have a running back 3. They have Jacobs, Genty, and that's it. So, I mean, I would go ahead and I would try to send one of the depth running backs for just a better quarterback, to be honest. Maybe it's just the quarterbacks that you mentioned I'm not a massive fan of. Going through and looking at the waiver wire options, I don't necessarily think you need to make any pivots. A personal preference type thing, I would probably cut Josh Downs in favor of Colson Loveland, just because I think it's more likely that... Actually, I can't even say it's more likely that Loveland pops and then all of a sudden you can sell Loveland because trade deadline's this week. So maybe that doesn't even matter for you. But honestly, I think it's more likely that Loveland pops and then all of a sudden you're able to actually put Loveland in the flex instead of J.K. Dobbins. So I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this, my friend. But again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. And let's move this over. And shout out the dev team. Here's what I had realized. I had realized, obviously, y'all can submit screenshots of your fantasy team through the site. And I had realized, oh, y'all could submit not great screenshots, not YouTube-friendly screenshots. And if they pop up on the screen, maybe it gives us a problem with YouTube. So they put this little camera here so I know it's a screenshot so I can look at it off the stream to make sure, hey, this is YouTube friendly before we pull it on screen. So now that's no longer a concern. Now, anyway, hey, Mason, feeling pretty good about the squad's potential. But looking for an unbiased opinion, is there anything I should try to polish up before the trade deadline or make a run as is? All right, let's go ahead and let's check this out. Let me first look at the league settings. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, and we have a couple IR slots. So we are in a really interesting situation where the wide receiver depth isn't going to matter at all. Quarterback, we have Caleb Williams. Caleb, in my mind, is a great quarterback to roster 2 QBs with and play the matchups between both of them. I don't necessarily view Caleb Williams as a locked and loaded auto start regardless of matchup, but I do think that he could be very interesting dependent on the matchup that he has. We probably want to get him in our lineup. Now, going over and looking at the bench, we have Brock Purdy. I would throw Brock Purdy into that same exact range. So in my mind, it makes a lot of sense rostering both of those quarterbacks. Going to running back, we have Derrick Henry, RB1. Completely fine having Derrick Henry. I, in general, would probably rather have him as an RB2 rather than an RB1, but we are fine because RJ Harvey all of a sudden looks like a must-start name every single week. And now going down to the bench, we don't have much. We have Ramondre Stevenson, who at the very best case is just going to be a premium handcuff back. If anything were to occur to Trevion Henderson now, no way in hell you could ever start him outside of a Trevion injury. But also possibly in week 13, you're going to be getting Amari Hampton back. So a running back, having Henry and RJ Harvey and then Amari and Hampton, it's a solid RB room operating under the assumption that we can afford to wait for the long term. Now, wide receiver, we have St. Brown, Igbuka, Rome Odunze at wide receiver and a flex. So we're in a really good situation there. Going over to the bench, we have Ricky Pearsall, A-OK. So really like wide receiver. We don't have too much depth either. Tight end, we have Kyle Pitts and Tyler Warren. So we have Pitts that we can play this week. Tyler Warren for the long term. Absolutely love to see that. The only holdup I have with this team is we're rostering 3 DSTs. So, I mean, in general, I would probably go through and I would maybe move off one of the defenses and pick up a running back on the waiver wire. If you had a losing record and you were sitting at 4-6 and I don't know, if you were sitting at 4-6, I wouldn't fault you at all for going through and throwing Amari and Hampton on the trade block and seeing if you could potentially send Amari and Hampton and like Derrick Henry, just send a 2-for-1 deal to get back an even better running back. But if you had a winning record and you can afford to think about the long term for the playoffs, I really like it. The literal only thing I would do is probably go ahead and drop a defense and pick up a running back. But I really like your team. Like, I'm sorry, I wish I had more for you, but I think you're just rolling with this as is. I think it's a great squad. But yeah, again, really appreciate you. I wish I had something else for you, but I think the only scenario I'd do anything is if I had a losing team and really needed to go through and maybe sell sell Amari and Hampton to get somebody back in that's going to help now. So I think really I just cut a defense and then pick up another running back depth piece. But let's move this over to Nathan. Nathan says, trade deadline's coming up. I'm 2-8 and try to figure it out if I rebuild or reload for next year. So this is a dynasty league. So if you're 2-8, even if you have the best team in the league and you're in the dynasty format, you rebuild. Okay. Now, going through and looking at our dynasty team, we have a decent amount of value. Like, we are currently 5th in this league. In terms of points scored, we are 8th in this league. So we're actually not that bad with our points scored, but ultimately, if you were unlucky enough to go to 2-8, I'm sorry, you just got to go through and throw in the towel, right? We're playing for 2026 at this point. Looking at quarterback, we have Jaden Daniels injured, Trevor Lawrence. We have Mariota that we can play here in the short term. So we're A-okay at quarterback. Like in terms of options that maybe have a short shelf life and that you should look to sell in a rebuild team, I think you could go through and possibly look to sell Marcus Mariota. And if you can get back a second rounder for Mariota, it'd be an absolute no-brainer if a team really needs a quarterback there. But again, going to be much, much easier said than done. Going over to running back, I do think that James Cook, more likely than not, is going to be worth less this offseason than he is now, just given what you typically have with the trajectory of running backs once they hit their second contracts. So I would probably look to see if we can offload James Cook. And my initial offer to every single team in this league is, hey, I'll give you James Cook for your 2026 rookie first and your 2027 rookie first. Now, that's probably going to get rejected from everybody. And you can probably go through and revert that offer to, I'll give you James Cook for your 2026 first, second, and third. And we would take that one instead. Now, in terms of anything else you'd look to do, going through and maybe looking at a name like Kareem Hunt, that's a short-term fill-in here. Easier said than done, but if you can sell Kareem Hunt for a second and a third, obviously that'd be something that we would look to do. Now, going over to what we have at wide receiver. Neighbors, Tedero McMillan, Brian Thomas are all names that could increase in value going into this offseason, and honestly, likely will. So for that reason, these are names on a rebuilding team I'd want to go ahead and build around. Devonta Smith, I would throw in a similar boat to James Cook, and that, well, you know what? He's probably going to be worth less this offseason than he is right now. So I probably would go ahead and throw Devonta Smith on the trade block, and I don't expect you to get the same thing that you're going to get for James Cook for him. But if you could sell Devonta Smith and in return maybe get back like a 2026 first, I would go for it. Moving over to tight ends, we have Isaiah Likely and Dallas Goedert. I mean, I would throw Dallas Goedert out there and see if you could get back a second and a third. And then honestly, I'm not looking to do anything else other than that. I think this team, you try to sell Mariota, James Cook, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and then you're honestly rolling into the future. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this, my friend. And again, I think you have a good team for the long term in Dynasty, but I do 100% think that you need to pivot over to a rebuild. Now, let's check this out for Eshaw. Says, looking to see who to trade for and who to trade away. Thinking of trading JT for a couple of firsts if possible. Team is currently 5-5. Okay, so we are slim pickings. Let me go through and see some recent trades that are done in your league. Okay. So no future picks are looking like they're getting dealt in your league. But it does look like you maybe already sold Jonathan Taylor. Looks like you sold Taylor for Dowdle, Pickens, and Ladd. And honestly, I do not like that deal in a vacuum. For most fantasy football teams, if you were looking at Jonathan Taylor versus Dowdle, Pickens, and Ladd, I would say you want the Jonathan Taylor side. However, your league here is going to be a little bit different. And the reason for that is you are playing in a start 9 format. So since your league is a start 9 league, like this is a very deep format where like all of those players that you traded for are pretty much guaranteed to be hitting your starting lineup. Now, quarterback, we have the combination of Jackson Dart as well as Brock Purdy. So Dart, Purdy, we're completely fine playing the matchups between these two guys going into the future. I don't necessarily think that there is much to say here. Again, start 9 format, quarterback's actually going to make up a slightly lower percentage of your starting lineup output anyway. Then looking at running back, we have Dowdle, Tyrone Tracy, Jordan Mason, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So running back is your biggest weakness. If this was a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, you would be absolutely cooked here at the running back position. But it's a start 9 league. So start 9 format's like 3 wide receivers, 2 flex. So if that is going to be the case, you're telling me that we can start Igbuka, Pickens, Ladd, Tet, DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf's our wide receiver 5 into our lineup every week. Nobody's going to be able to compete with that. I don't know why the waiver wire is not pulling up. Let me double check that. Yeah, that is very weird. Is that happening with the other ones? The other one's waiver wire is pulling up just fine. I would say in general, I don't see what Mason Taylor is doing on this roster. I would 100% cut Mason Taylor and pick up another running back off of waivers, as running back clearly is going to be your biggest need. And then because it's a start 9 format, I like the trade that you made. I like the roster that you have. Because while, yeah, RB2, we're going to be very weak, it doesn't really matter if at the end of the day, you have a better wide receiver 2, a better wide receiver 3, a better wide receiver 4, a better wide receiver 5 than anybody that we're going to go up against. And realistically, you can, with these league settings, get every single one of those players into your lineup. Now, if the league analyzer is pulling this in incorrectly, where instead this is actually a league in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, then ignore everything I just said. Because if you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, then in that case, you actually should very much go through and almost reverse the deal that you made with Jonathan Taylor, where in that kind of format, I'd be trying to sell the depth wide receiver like Ladd McConkey with Tyron Tracy to go ahead and get an upgrade at running back. But again, if this is a start 9 format where you can start 5 wide receivers here weekly, then I like the deal that you made. And honestly, I like the team that you built, and I probably look to hold on to it. But again, that's going to be very specific to your league format, because if I were to see this with somebody having a different roster construction or league settings, I would actually be very concerned. But I appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. Now, let's move this over to our next question. It's going to be from Belkinus. It says, I'm 4-6 and desperate for a running back. I've gotten offers for McCaffrey, but I don't feel like that really fixes my issue. Any suggestions for a trade or waiver wire to add so I can maybe survive until Hampton comes back? I think it might be too late if I try that, though. Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's look at this. So we are, we're the team that has Christian McCaffrey. That's 4-6. So let's just see. Okay, this is us here. And yeah, we have Amari Hampton that can come back in the long term. We've scored the 4th most points in this league, but because you are 4-6, you're very much in a spot in which you need to be thinking about how we score points right this second, not the long term. Now, we also got the bad news in that Sam Laporta is going to the IR. So all of a sudden we have another hole that we are possibly going to have to address. Now, looking at what we have with quarterback, we're rolling with Baker Mayfield. Is Baker Mayfield an incredible QB1 in fantasy to have? Nah, I wouldn't use the word incredible, but we can get by with it, right? We'll be able to be okay here. Then going over to what we have at running back, we have CMC, the anchor holding us down. The one thing will be with this, though, is CMC is a week 14 bye. And the running backs that we have beyond CMC are questionable to say the least. We have Amari and Hampton, currently injured. Best case scenario, you get him back in week 13. And with that in mind as well, we're 4-6. We can't just be thinking about the fantasy playoffs. We got to be thinking about how we win right now. Going over to receiver, we have Igbuka, Michael Pittman, Devonta Smith, Brian Thomas. And then at tight end, we have Sam Laporta and Bad Frymuth. Now, this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So because this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, in my mind, there's very clearly a trade to be made here. I think you need to go through, you need to take one of the depth wide receivers that you have, because Brian Thomas is your wide receiver 4. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and make an argument for Brian Thomas to be some stud rest of season. But I do think that you could have him as your wide receiver 3 and be A-okay. So what I would probably look at doing is if you could go ahead and possibly try to trade the combination of Michael Pittman Jr. as well as Amari and Hampton and send them in a 2-for-1 deal to go ahead and get an upgrade at running back to somebody that's actually going to start right now, that would be very, very interesting. Going over to tight ends, we have Laporta and Pat Freiermuth. While don't get me wrong, this is a major concern. The options on the waiver wire are absolute crap. I think you are probably stuck here with these guys. I don't necessarily think that you're going to be able to go through and very easily make an adjustment where we sell a player for a better tight end. Ultimately, going through and looking at the options that you have right now, they're not that strong, right? Like, what could we sell that somebody's going to be excited for? I have no idea. Nobody's buying Devin Singletary. Nobody's giving you a tight end for Devin Singletary, Khalil Shakir, Kayshon Boutte. So I really think the only trade, and there is a trade that I want to make with this team, is you sell Amari and Hampton. It's coming back in 2 weeks, hopefully, at the very best, to a playoff team in a deal with a depth wide receiver like Michael Pittman Jr. to go and get an upgrade to a running back that's going to play right now and hopefully help us not fall to 4-7. Hopefully help us not fall to 4-8. But I really appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out in some way with this, my guy. Now, let's move this over to our next question. It's going to be from G. D'Amico. It says, how do I improve my team to beat the top 2 squads in the league? So we are Team Gavin. Yeah, there are 2 teams up here that are both 7-3 that have the most value in this league. This team is JT, Bucky, Hampton, Lamb, Igbuka, Trey McBride. This is going to be a tough team to overcome. Now, good news for us is it's a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. So if it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 10-team league, like you're in a spot in which even if somebody has like a much more well-rounded roster, if you were to just have a singular player blow up for 30, 40 points in a shallow starting lineup like this, they'll win you the week straight up by themselves. Because you can only put so many players into your lineup every week here. And Lamar is one of those quarterbacks that could straight up just win you a week by himself. Lamar can drop 40 points and take down one of those top teams for you. So we have Lamar and Burrow. Much easier said than done, but obviously, I mean, if you could go through it and sell Burrow and Kyle Pitts and get a tight end upgrade, we would. But again, much easier said than done. You're probably not going to be able to. Going over and looking at what we have at running back, we have Quinshon Judkins, Chase Brown. We have Kamani Vidal as a solid depth piece, but Judkins and Chase Brown are both already through their bye weeks already. So we're not going to be stressing with what we have here for these 2 spots. I mean, we are A-okay. Looking at wide receiver, we have Chase, St. Brown, Nico. 3 guys that we can put in our lineup every week. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in the flex. And then we have Kyle Pitts at tight end. So in my mind, your starting lineup is very, very good. Don't get me wrong. Now, at the same time, I agree that if you could get an upgrade either from Quinshon Judkins as your running back 1 to get a better RB1, from Kyle Pitts to get a better tight end 1, I mean, I don't think this team could make a trade. But like, I just don't necessarily see like who people trade for. Nobody's going to trade for Xavier Worthy on your team if Troy Franklin's sitting out there on the waiver wire for free. Now that Godwin's back at practice, I would say that we can agree you're not starting Tez Johnson this week, right? Because instead you're going to be starting Jamar Chase. You're going to be starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to be starting Nico Collins. So you're not starting Tez Johnson this week. Godwin's back at practice. There's a real shot Godwin's back a week from now. So if that's the case, I would probably plan on cutting Tez Johnson and picking up Troy Franklin from the waiver wire. If you don't like Troy Franklin, again, I don't think you would ever really start Troy Franklin here anyway. So I think you could consider cutting Tez Johnson and instead picking up Harold Fannin. Or you could consider picking up a player like Tyler Algier, where if there were to be an injury in front of him, he turns into a league winner. So trade-wise, if you can leverage Burrow in it or Kamani Vidal in one of those deals to get an upgrade inside the starting lineup in a shallow format like this, you would. But it's much easier said than done. I think really the main thing I'm doing right now is cutting Tez Johnson and picking up either a handcuff running back like Tyler Algier or the tight end option like Harold Fannin, just in case we need to go ahead and roll with him if Kyle Pitts does not perform well. But I really appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out in some way with this, my friend. Now, let's move this over to our next question. This is going to be from Ben Bayers. This is the number one team in this league. We've scored the second most points in this league. There's a team in your league that is 10-0. Absolutely wild. They've only scored about 10 more points than you. You're 6-4. So it looks like that team is the luckiest team on the planet. This is a 12-team start 8 format. So this is a league in which you can start up to 4 wide receivers here weekly. We have the elite quarterback with Mahomes. Mahomes already through his bye week as well. So you're not really having to worry about anything with Mahomes or the quarterback position overall. You don't need to roster a backup option. We can just roll with Mahomes and be A-okay. Going over to running back, we have Gibbs, locked and loaded starter as our running back one every single week. We have RJ Harvey, very compelling RB2 rest of season at this point. We have the long-term upside with Amari and Hampton, and we have Woody Marks as well. So you have an incredible amount of running back depth. Wide receiver, we have Puka Nacua, we have Igbuka, we have Pickens, we have Dobbs, we have Franklin, we have Terry McLaurin and Darnell Mooney. And then tight end, we have Tyler Warren, Mark Andrews, Kate Otten. So you have an incredible team across pretty much every single position. You're a top 5 team when it comes to value. If we were looking at going through and making any move here, I think you will have expendable running back value that you can eventually go through and sell. Like if we're looking at somebody like RJ Harvey is a locked and loaded RB2 rest of season in my mind with a ton of upside that is going to be very exciting. And a lot of teams could look at RJ Harvey and go, oh my gosh, I need this type of production. But you may be okay if Amari and Hampton comes back in week 13. So I wouldn't look at doing anything now if I were you, because your team is very well balanced. You don't have Hampton back just yet. But say there's a world in which RJ Harvey is crushing, Woody Marks is crushing, and you get Amari and Hampton back in week 13, then at that point, maybe you consider going through and looking at selling some combination of Amari and Hampton and Romeo Dobbs and getting yourself a true elite level wide receiver that you can flex every week. But yeah, you have an incredible team. I would also say that Like, you can afford to cut either Mark Andrews or Kate Otten, whoever you would prefer not playing this week. But if you really wanted to hold on to him for now, I'm not going to fault you for it. If I were looking at this, I would probably prefer playing Kate Otten this week over Mark Andrews. But at the very minimum, after this week, go ahead and cut Kate Otten with the expectations that more likely than not, you are going to be getting a healthy Tampa Bay Buccaneer player back into this offense in week 12. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. But honestly, I don't think you need help. I think you're in a great spot. Okay, so I know we still have a couple more team reviews to get through, but let me run through the fast questions quickly. These are the trade starts it. We have a bunch of questions from Bitter Hornet, as we always do. Let's move this over. This one's going to be It's Sacred. Says, experts say start Vidal over Henry since he's going against the Cleveland defense. What do you think? Love you. Love you, my friend. Really appreciate you looking at this. RJRV and Derrick Henry have tough matchups. Woody Marks is a very good matchup going up against the Tennessee Titans. I'll pull up the projections on what they have. I put Derrick Henry ahead of Woody Marks in my rankings this week just because I'm not mentally tough enough to tell somebody to play Woody Marks. When we're looking at Woody Marks, he has had one game in his career with over 20 fantasy points. He's had 3 games in his career with 15 or more. I know he's been trending in the right direction with his usage, blah, blah, blah. But if we pull this up with Woody Marks, right now on Underdog, he is currently higher or lower, 12.75 fantasy points, 76.5 total yards. If you look at Derrick Henry for reference, Derrick Henry is currently higher or lower, 13.25. So the median projections say Derrick Henry. My rankings, I had Derrick Henry in there as well. I know last time Derrick Henry played Cleveland, it was a bloodbath where Derrick Henry scored 2.3 fantasy points. It was absolutely brutal. But they are 7.5 point favorites. A lot of people said you couldn't play Breece Hall against this Cleveland Browns defense last week. We played Breece Hall last week with confidence because he's a good running back. So I would probably, if it was my team, I'm going to be honest with you, I would play Derrick Henry over Woody Marks. But I'm also going to be honest and say that I understand I'm an idiot and I get things wrong all the time. But yeah, wishing you the best of luck here, my friend. Now let's move this over to Underdog. It says 4-6 with Henderson and CMC on the week 14 bye. You can't do this. No way. I know Henderson and CMC both on a week 14 bye. I'm not opposed to you going through and selling the players that still have to go through their bye weeks if you have a losing record, blah, blah, blah. But come on, you're trading for Bucky Irving, who's not even playing this week. And we can't be 100% certain that Bucky Irving's playing next week. So, not opposed to going through and selling McCaffrey for like a king's ransom. But I am opposed for looking to avoid him because he has the week 14 bye and then selling him for an injured running back. Okay, but I got to log out and log back in so we can keep ripping these questions for y'all. And gosh, dang, I have the Texas game going on another screen right now. And don't know if y'all know this about the University of Texas. It looks like we're not that good at football. I know everybody wants to make excuses for Arch Manning, but at least all my Texas friends want to make excuses for Arch. My takeaway is the dude's not good. Okay. Now, Underdog, like I said, I understand why you would think about doing it, but you can't go through and trade for Bucky. Now, Hurd says, not sure how much value to McBride adds for the playoffs. Gibbs to Jacobs, downgrade. Goddard and Benson to McBride, massive upgrade. The value gap between Goddard to McBride, points per game wise, is going to be larger than the gap from Gibbs to Josh Jacobs. I'd go McBride there easily. Bitter Hornet, got a bunch of questions to look at. Worried about Bijan's current usage with Algiers' goal line role. Should we keep Dowdle or grab Bijan? I would go with Bijan Robinson. I completely understand where you're coming from, though. I think this is a very fair trade, and I could see Rico Dowdle being the winning side. Okay. Giving up wide receiver 2. Do I have the wide receiver depth to do this? You 100%. Doesn't matter what your wide receiver room looks like. Well, say you do have the wide receiver depth now that Pearsall's coming back. But even if you would have had to stream wide receivers, I would have still very easily traded Aaron Jones and T. Higgins for Devon Achane. W. French trading away Jordan Addison and T. Higgins for Devontae Adams. It's a 10-team start 8 format. Left over, we would have Adams, Lamb, Waddle, Igbuka, Nico. So I wouldn't recommend everybody to do this, but a team that has as much depth as yours, yes, I think you can. Okay, let's move this over to our next one. Bitter Hornet trading away Tet and Harold Fannin for Tyler Warren. I would take Tyler Warren here. Tez Johnson, Tet, and Harold Fannin for Tyler Warren. Tez Johnson's barely worth the roster spot for me. Yes, I would do that. I would 100% do this for Brock Bowers. I'd prefer Bowers over Warren. Chase Brown, Tedero McMillan for Hampton and Zay Flowers. I would do this. I forgot what the record is on this team. I would do this if we had a winning team. And if you have a winning team where you can afford to wait a couple weeks, it's tough. I think it's a fair deal. I would only do it if you can afford to wait until week 13 to get Amari and Hampton. But getting those 2 extra weeks from Chase Brown's a big difference maker. Like, honestly, I may need to move Chase Brown ahead of Hampton in my rest of season ranks. Aaron Jones Sutton for Jalen Ward and Romeo Dobbs. Here, I'd rather have Jalen Ward and Romeo Dobbs. And then Aaron Jones or Zay Flowers. I would trade Aaron Jones for Zay Flowers personally. Now, Luke says trading away Jefferson for Ladd and RJ Harvey. Right now at running back, you have Bijan, Bucky, and that's about it. So knowing that you need the running back depth, you are okay in doing this. Is it the most exciting trade in the world? No, but I think you can make it. But it looks like we had 200 likes on the stream, so let me go ahead and send out a bunch of free questions in the chat. If y'all wanted to qualify for free questions, pretty simple. All you got to do is go down to the chats and drop your flockfantasy.com username after you leave a like on the live stream, and we'll pick out a couple of y'all to send free questions to. Okay. GT007 says, we're going to do Jefferson for Barkley or Jefferson and another player for Henry and Pickens. We got 3 offers. Thank you. Thank you. So here's the thing. It's an 8-team league. 8-team league, the depth's not going to matter much. But running back, you have Josh Jacobs and a bunch of crap for an 8-team format. So my favorite offer out of the 3 that you have laid out here would be selling Justin Jefferson and getting back Saquon Barkley. That would be my preferred deal out of the ones that you're mentioning. Now, Tan says, don't trust JMO. Does this make sense with 3 wide receiver, running back / tight end? So this is a super deep league. 100% you would do this. Like, this is an incredible trade. I have Saquon Barkley on my own team, so I hope I'm wrong with this. But it does seem like Saquon Barkley and McCaffrey are still just in completely different tiers rest of season. So, yeah, you should definitely go and get McCaffrey. But let me send out some free questions real quick in the chat. This one's going to be going over to a Vibrant Spork. Let me see if I can find you real quick, my friend. Appreciate you hanging out with us in this stream. Okay. Vibrant Spork. Just found you. Just sent you over a free start set question. Appreciate you hanging out with us again. And let's send this next one out to Bucky Fan. Just found you. Just sent you over that free start sit. And let's send this next one out to Nick Sava. Okay. Just found you. Just sent you over a free start set. Appreciate you always hanging out with us in this live stream, my guy. Okay. Now let's move this over. And, Bitter Hornet says that Hampton trade team is 8-2. If that Hampton trade team is 8-2, I think you can make it. I prefer the other deals that you sent. But if that's the only one that gets accepted, I probably would make that trade for Hampton if you were 8-2. With Laporta out, he needs a tight end. Should I offer this? I would definitely have Loveland over Laporta rest of season now that you're in a spot in which Laporta has hit the IR. You have Harold Fan. Yeah, like I would honestly, I don't think you're in the business of trading away a tight end. Even trading a tight end for like a wide receiver wouldn't make sense for you there. I would keep Loveland and Fan and hope one separates. Now, L. Dickinson. Here, running back, I don't know if I'm assuming you didn't start Henderson. You had Dowdle and Gibbs. Wide receiver, you have Rice. I'd start Nico over Adams, and then Adams in the flex. Again, if you started, I would bench Adams out of them if you started Henderson. Okay. Now, Merzikos. Here for the flex between Tez Johnson as well as Xavier Worthy. I'm an idiot, so I would probably go ahead and put Xavier Worthy in. Tez Johnson had multiple receiving touchdowns last week, but at the same time, he had 5 targets. Now, Pnomad, here for the flex, you play Gadsden. And then again, I'm an idiot, so I would probably put Worthy in over Franklin and Judy, but if you wanted to play a different player other than Worthy, I would go with Franklin. Bryn is able here for the flex. I think you're probably going to end up playing Woody Marks in a phenomenal matchup against Tennessee. Eldov for the flex. Best wide receiver is probably DJ Moore. Best running backs probably Dermot. I'd probably just play DJ Moore. Disgusting. Don't like the matchup. Don't like the player, but it is what it is. Bitter Hornets, a CMC Dowdle week 14 bye. Do we trade or ride it out? Pearsall in here. You have Aaron Jones. You have Aaron Jones in a couple weeks to figure it out off the waiver wire. So honestly, I think I would ride it out, my guy. I think you got bigger fish to fry than worrying about the week 14 bye. Smooth trading Derrick Henry and Troy Franklin for Justin Jefferson in a full PPR format. I would 100% make this move. You have CMC and then hopefully Bucky and or Hampton coming back soon. Now, Smokey, running back, you're going to start the combo of Devon Achane and Tyler Algier. Wide receiver, you start Pickens and Puka. Tight ends, you're playing, I'd go Ertz, to be honest. And then in the flex, I think you go Dobbs as well as Devonta Smith. Alec Pierce is getting more and more interesting every week, but obviously on bye. Now, Centella, here, I'm assuming we need 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex. I just can't answer because I don't know. Did you start Diggs? Did you start Henderson on Thursday? How would rank the running backs? So probably go Chase Brown, Judkins. Or how would rank all the flex options excluding the Patriots guys? Because I don't know if you already started them. I'd go Rice, Jefferson, Brown, Judkins. But again, I don't know if you started those Patriots options already. And obviously, hindsight being 2020, I hope you started them. Now, Vito trading Rome and Woody Marks for Quinshon Judkins. 12-team start 8 format. I would opt to go with the 2 starters. I would go with Rome and Marks. Okay. Let me refresh this. This one's going to be out from Dwayne Gretzky. It says, Mason, can you help me with wide receiver start sits this week? Thank you. Thank you, my guy. I think I would go London and Debo, realistically. If you were looking at Debo Samuel, like, don't get me wrong, I completely understand being very scared off with Mariota being the quarterback, and most weeks I would be, but it is interesting that, like, you do have sportsbooks giving a lot of credit with the over-under of that Washington-Miami game. Like, they are telling us that there should be a considerable amount of points scored by both offenses. Well, at the same time, we can sit here and say, well, if you're looking at Debo Samuel, he's going to be a pretty large part of that offense when you have no Terry McLaurin in it. So I would probably go Debo. Okay. Now Nebu is trading Henry, Tracy, Barkley for Bijan, Jamo. Barkley to Bijan upgrade, Tracy to Jamo, up to you. I'm paying Henry to get it done. 12 teams start 8 format. I would say a lot of teams, I'm going to want the Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley side. But because you have the rookie running backs popping and it looks like Derrick Henry is an expendable piece for you, I'm actually fine if you make this move. I think your team is good enough where you can afford to do it. I wouldn't say that for a lot of people, but I think you are in a unique situation here. Now, Bimmerdock, wide receiver. No Pittman, no Pierce. I'd play Sutton over Tez Johnson still. I know Tez Johnson's been much better, but I don't know if you can continue to bank on the touchdown efficiency. Okay. Now, Shaquille looking at Caleb versus McCarthy or versus Tua. So I will say that, like, the Vikings are pretty heavy favorites here over Chicago. So maybe with that being said, if the Vikings are going to score significantly more points than the Chicago Bears, you should go ahead and take McCarthy over Caleb. But Caleb's running the ball a bit more. I would play Caleb if it was my team. And then over in the flex, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Rome Odunze. Now, Double O Will says, pick 2 between Sutton, White, Jamo, and Montgomery. I know a lot of people are very excited about Sean Tucker. I would still expect Rachaad White to lead this backfield personally. Jamo gets the bump up with Sam Laporta now out. So I'm higher on Jamo than I otherwise would have been. I probably go Jamo and White. It's super close. A Slim Trim running back, we're going to play Chase Brown as well as Quinshon Judkins. And in my mind, it's pretty simple. I know Woody Marks has a really good matchup. So I wouldn't fault you for thinking, oh, do we go Marks? Do we go Kamani Vidal? But I wouldn't be able to do it. Okay. Now, Mr. Travis Swift, here quarterback between Stafford and Mahomes. Pretty spot to go Mahomes. A running back, we're going to take Quinshon Judkins. Wide receiver, I'd play Debo Samuel. And then there in the flex, RJ Harvey, Woody Marks. Give me RJ Harvey, but I understand Woody Marks is the much better matchup. Okay. Now, Beto, always happy to see you. Quarterback, I'd go Stafford over Caleb this week. Wide receiver, we're starting Lamb and probably Pearsall. Tight end, we have Andrews. And then in the flex, you're going to go Genty. I'd probably go Xavier Worthy over the big Q now that you have Gadsden good to go. It's just tough to project Quentin Johnston to see that much target volume. But I think you can go back and forth between Quentin Johnston and Xavier Worthy. Obviously, Quentin Johnston's been the much better name so far this season. Okay. Now, Westies trading Harvey and Tedero McMillan for Ashton Genty. 12 teams start 8 format. Leftover receiver, we'd have St. Brown, Rice, Rome. Running back, you'd have Bijan, Bucky, Hampton, Genty. So because your team is loaded, I am fine with you going out there and making the 2-for-1 deal to get the best player in it. I'm fine with you going out there and trading for Ashton Genty. I don't think it's like a no-brainer. You can't lose this deal. Like, you can definitely lose it. There's a real shot RGRV's better than Ash and Genty rest of season based off their offenses. But I think it's a completely fine deal to make. I think you can go get Genty here. Nick Sava trading Jalen Warren, A.J. Brown, Alec Pierce for Igbuka and Kamara. I think Igbuka is probably the best player in this deal. Kamara, Alec Pierce, up to you. Igbuka versus Jalen Warren, A.J. Brown. Your running back room's not great. It's a 10-team start 8 formats. This would force you to start realistically Woody Marks, Pickens, a lot. So you a running back, you'd start Gibbs, Bucky, Marks, Pickens, Olave, Igbuka. If you're a team that can afford to lose this week and wait for the long term until you get Bucky back in and it makes your starters just more compelling, then sure, you can do it. But again, it puts you in a little bit of a compromising spot, especially as you've had the Mike Evans injury. So your depth's been thinned out just a bit here. Now, Garrison, quarterback, play Baker. And then in the flex, obviously, you play Rashee Rice. I know it's not the best matchup, but he's an auto start. Beta Hornet says, should I grab Caleb off the waiver wire and drop Mariota? He's on bye next week. Caleb has some tough games, weeks 14 through 17. Should we drop Tez, keep Mariota, and play? No, I think you would just go ahead. And honestly, my friend, I think I would just drop Mariota and play and pick up Caleb and keep it simple. Because you could also always decide to pivot over and drop Caleb for a different quarterback, right? So I would just stream quarterbacks. I think Caleb's a better option than Mariota. Let me make sure that I can send you a bunch of free questions so you resubmit this. I'm sorry, resubmit whenever you want. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next one. It's going to be from Tans. Trading Barkley and A.J. Brown for Chase Brown and Jalen Waddle. A.J. Brown to Waddle upgrade. Barkley to Chase Brown downgrade. For me, I mean, I have Waddle and Saquon Barkley on my own fantasy team, so maybe I'm biased a couple different ways, but I would think that the points per game drop from Barkley to Chase Brown is going to be larger than the points per game gain that you're going to get from A.J. Brown to Jalen Waddle. So I would go with the Eagles. And Waddle still has to go through his bye. C. Sterner, wide receiver, you're going to go ahead and you'll, oh, dear God, Parker Washington, I guess. Playing Harold Fannin, running back Chris Rodriguez and Dermicado. If Ridley's going to play, you can go Ridley. And if he's going to miss, you can go with Chimera DK if you want. But the true answer is, I think you could go out there and honestly, I think you could stream better players. Now, John says 4 and 6 need to win. Is this wide receiver downgrade worth the tight end upgrade? I can't see who our tight end is. I'm assuming maybe you're just streaming options. Maybe you lost Laporta. And if that's the case, I do think it's very much a fair deal. Now, if instead you had like an okay player that you could put in there, like Dallas Goedert, then I'd probably opt on holding on to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But if you legitimately are just streaming tight ends off the waiver wire, then I think you can make this deal. Now, Mind Amar trading London and Sharps for Marks, Harvey, and Pittman. I can't see your team. If you are desperate for running back production, I understand it. You're giving up the best player, so I'm not going to mark the running back side as the winning one. But the only way that I would do this is if you are absolutely desperate for help at running back to the point where you know without question that Woody Marks and RJRV look like every week starters for you. Okay. Now let's move this to our next question. This is, I'm Josh. Quarterback between Rodgers and Lawrence. Give me Rodgers given the matchup. And then in the flex, you're going to play Chase Brown. There's just going to be a lot of points scored in that game. Now, Nick Sava here for the flex. I think you go ahead and you play Woody Marks in a really good matchup against the Tennessee Titans. Okay. Let's refresh this. We get Hunter Baldwin, quarterback. You go Mahomes over Flacco easily. And running back, I'm going to take Chase Brown here. Don't overthink it. I know Flacco went nuclear against the Steelers last week, but you still got to play Mahomes. Now, Belcanis. Here, quarterback, Dak versus Caleb. Give me Dak. Caleb, much tougher matchup than what he's seen over the past few weeks. And then in the flex, I know we never really want to flex a tight end, but Gadsden's just been so damn good. But I think that's probably going to be it for this live stream. These will be the first things that we look at in the morning, will be those leftover team reviews. I appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Again, thank you so much. I'll be live at like 7 in the morning tomorrow, 7 my time, 8 a.m. Eastern. Answering your questions. I'll turn on questions right now where anybody can buy them on the site if they want. We'll have it that way all the way through tomorrow morning. And then whenever we run out of questions, we'll probably cut the live stream there. But I really appreciate y'all hanging out with us. As always, I'm wishing you the best of luck because we are getting to the point of the season where it's like, hey, if you're 2-8 and you lose this week, unless you're playing to avoid the last place punishment, GG's, it's over. Like if you don't have a last place punishment in your league, you fall to 2-9, pack it up. I mean, still submit your starting lineup so they don't kick you from the league the next year, but you'll have nothing to play for. But I really appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. No, Corey says, how was the movie? Yeah, we watched a movie last night, the fiance and I. We watched Roofman. I don't know if y'all have seen Roofman before, but it's the new Ashton Kutcher movie. We had to rent it on, like, obviously you can rent it on Apple, rent it on Amazon or whatever. But it was incredible. So, highly recommend Roofman. The movies that I've seen lately that I would say are really good is the recent Leonardo DiCaprio movie and the recent Channing Tatum movie. John says Weapons badass. Check it out. We watched Weapons 2 a couple months ago, and I knew how it ended. My fiance saw it in theaters, and she told me after the movie. Of course, I just let her talk about it. It's not like I was dying to hear the ending. So I wasn't a big fan of Weapons, but I knew how it ended. I think maybe if I didn't know how it ended, I would have liked it more. But appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. I will hopefully see y'all in the morning. And yeah, hope you have a great night.